Good morning.
Good morning.
Woo! Um,
I just operated there.
it's true. It's a snowy guest Thursday with a guest who just texted to say he's on his way, but he's in Moorhead. He got stuck behind a train, and the roads are terribly, terribly icy. So we're gonna just banter till Alex comes on.
We're gonna banter. Let's banter away.
Yeah. So we're not going to bemoan the weather. It's all right. It is what it is. My hair looks funny today. But back to hair. That was the whole premise of when we first started.
Yes, it was. You were having a bad hair day back in the day.
Yeah, it is a tough deal. Oh no, look at Bob Wilson. Morning. He's always late. Bob, we'll take your word for it. We don't know Alex, and hopefully that doesn't hurt Alex's feelings. But it's good to know. Snow and trains. I mean, what can you do? So let's see. Great. All right. He'll be on in just a second. This is very exciting. Dr. Mary.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you worried about taking your little car into this weather today?
It's been worse, It's
Yeah.
Because it wasn't icy. There's no ice under the snow, so it.
Yeah, but I've read 2 reports now. We'll ask Alex when he hops on, hopefully sooner than later.
He might just start screaming out, snow
there he
again
is.
for everyone.
There he is. Whew. We have nothing more good to say. Let's bring Alex on. Good morning, Alex.
Hey, Alex.
Good morning.
How are the roads, sir?
They are slippery. My kids go to Park Christian in Moorhead, so we had to get from Fargo to Moorhead and then back. And of course, I was in Moorhead, so that means there was a train.
Of course. Always. When you need to be somewhere, then there's at least 2 trains often.
Yes. Yep.
Well, you're here now. You got here back to wherever you are safely, and that is all good. Nice to meet you, Alex.
Nice to meet you guys as well. Yep.
So I wrote on Facebook this morning that we first connected with you because you loved the hashtag normalize NA drinking.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I'm assuming you also are an NA drinker then.
I am. Yep.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so tell us your journey, Alex. What got you to the NA part of drinking?
What got me to the NA part of drinking? That's a good question. So I grew. I guess I'll just start at the beginning. I guess I was born in central Minnesota, but raised here in Fargo since I was 3. Graduated from Oak Grove. After high school, I joined the Army. I went to a senior military college down in Georgia to start, which was great. I think like the Citadel, West Point, that kind of thing. One of the senior military colleges, very steeped in tradition. And then from there, I was an infantryman in the Army, went to Iraq in 2006, spent 16 months there. And then later on, when I got out of the military, I was a private security contractor. I worked mostly in Afghanistan in that area. Worked for the Defense Department, State Department as well. And then now I'm a police officer here back home in the city of Fargo. And my journey into sobriety was slow and fast at the same time. I wasn't one of those people that started like with my first drink. I knew that this was going to be an issue. That wasn't me at all. When I came home from Iraq, they told us that we were going to have, because of what we had done and seen, we were going to have issues with substance abuse, PTSD, and I can't remember the stat they gave us, but it was a very large percentage of us were going to be parents. And I was recently married. My wife and I actually got married 5 weeks before I left for Iraq. Married my high school sweetheart, sitting like 8 feet from me in her home office. And we thought like, nope, none of that stuff is us. We're going to do the young and married thing. Approximately 10 months after I came home, our oldest was born. and he turns 14 on Sunday. And I told myself as I watched a lot of my friends struggle with alcohol, legal troubles, PTSD, I told myself, well, at least I'm not an alcoholic, and at least I don't have PTSD. Fast forward a long time, and I had gone through a bunch more. Like, the biggest thing for me was loss of friends. I've said it before, I've been a pallbearer more than I've been a groomsman. And I remember I was carrying my best friend died. My best friend Andrew died September 14th, 2009 in Afghanistan. And I remember being at his funeral. I spoke at his funeral and then was a pallbearer. And I remember carrying his casket out of the church behind the bagpipes. And I'm in a dress uniform, but luckily I had sunglasses on, and I'm a complete mess. And I remember thinking, I just don't want to feel like this. I don't want to feel this again. And so a few more years go by. I was a contractor overseas, lost some friends there as well. Lost a couple friends to suicide in the interim. And like I said, it was just probably like 7 or 8 years ago when I started using alcohol as like, and I was able to keep that very well hidden from everybody, like everybody except my wife. She was suffering very silently with being married to someone with a substance abuse problem. And on the outside, I was normal. Like, I was the guy that could go to the bar with everybody after work and have a couple beers, and it wasn't a big deal. But then I would also stop at the hostel on the way out while everybody else was headed home. And it just got to the point where there's, so many mornings waking up going, I do this, gotta stop. And finally, it was just Saturday night, and wasn't anything in particular that popped up, and I said, I'm done. And I went and found help the next morning. Everything from there has been, I'm very fortunate in my sobriety journey. I didn't lose my family. I didn't lose my job. Didn't get in trouble. Probably the thing that I'm most fortunate about is I didn't lose any friends or anything. I don't do it often, but I have no issue going to a bar with friends and hanging out, or going to a house party or whatever. It doesn't bother me. And one of the things that I'm fortunate for is that being able to be an NA drinker. I consider that something that I'm very fortunate with when I talk to other guys and they say, I can't even think about an NA beer, because I would either be able to use it to cover up the smell of actual alcohol, or I had a friend tell me no, I can't do that because I could drink a couple NA beers and then I could go have a bunch of real beers, and then if somebody smelled it on me, it would just be NA beer.
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Never thought about that.
So, for me, beer was never the stumbling block. The beer was the social thing that I used to cover up the fact that I was half a bottle of Bacardi deep already for the day. So I've tried they make the non-alcoholic spirit. I've tried that. That was just a Band-Aid. I'm sure it's great for a cocktail. There's some restaurants now that are starting to do that, and I'll probably give that a whirl. But I remember right when and I do think when people first get into sobriety, the NA thing, that's not an immediate goal for you, or it shouldn't be, in my opinion. It shouldn't be okay, I'm gonna drink alcohol yesterday and I'm gonna switch to NA beer today. I don't think I think that's just a recipe for you're going to drink like 100 NA beers in one day.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it wasn't something that was a huge part of my journey. It was right away, and I only say that it's a Band-Aid because I tried that. Like the week after I quit drinking, I had to go to a wedding, and it felt like I was just substituting. And I remember talking to an older gentleman who had shared some passages from the book and talked about if you're trying to steal something from that experience that you're missing in your sobriety, then you're not doing yourself any favors. If you're doing whatever you're doing for a legitimate social or familial reason, that's totally fine. But if you're just trying to substitute, if you're just trying to drink decaf coffee, essentially, it's not, you're not doing yourself any favors, in my opinion, because that's what I did. So I probably didn't touch anything NA I've been sober for like 19 months. I feel like I'm one of those people that like after your kid is a year old, they're a year old until they're so like counting the months is a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 19 months, and it's probably like 6 or 8 months for me. It wasn't a part of it, and then it was actually right after my 1 year. I was at a law enforcement appreciation event, actually put on by Budweiser. DS Beverages from Moorhead, they do a huge deal. They rent out the Air Museum, and and they had the Clydesdales and everything, and they tell you to bring your kids, and they auction off, or not auction off, they draw names from each agency for a keg of beer, which is 7 cases, 6-point-something cases of beer. And I won. And I walked up there and I was like, I don't drink. I'd be more than happy to donate this to friends. I'll be the beer fairy. I'll go drop off cases of beer at all my buddies' house and have a great summer. But I said, can I get this in Bud Zero? And the lady's like, I don't see why not. So I went over to DS Beverages in Moorhead, and they drove a forklift out of Bud Zero and set it in the back of my truck. So I had at one point like 7 cases of Bud Zero stacked up in my basement, and now I have them stashed at my in-laws' house and our lake cabin, and so everywhere I go I'm good. But I think that was probably the largest single distribution of Bud Zero in the history of the Chicago Moorhead area.
Love that.
That's really, really funny. Well, Alex, first of all, and I don't want this to sound just like a pass off, but my gosh, thank you for your service.
Yes.
It was my pleasure.
You have been in service to all of us for the great majority of your life. So thank you for that. And
since I was 18, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing this. We've not talked to anybody who is a physical manifestation of the statistics that we're hearing about the military and the trauma coming back and what you've seen and experienced. And gosh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it really was my pleasure. I was that kid when I grew up that I knew I was going to be, I wanted to be G.I. Joe, and then thought I'd be a cop, and it just kind of worked out.
Yeah, well, that's great. Here, somebody wrote to say hi to you. Mike. Oh, my God. Do you know Mike?
I don't.
Oh, I do.
Okay.
Okay, I thought maybe
from Mankato. Okay. I'm originally from Central Minnesota, so that.
I'll play this greeting for you because I know this must be for you, and I'm assuming you'll find it entertaining.
No, there's Bob. Morning,
We already
Bob.
said you're late because of snow. So it's really interesting to listen to your story, Alex, because it's minus the military piece and sort of the trauma decision. It's much more in keeping with your journey than many other people's. What do you want to say about that?
I don't have a DUI. I never got into trouble.
Your job was never
physically
really at risk.
harmed anyone. I kept doing my job. I kept doing my job well enough that they couldn't do anything about. I mean, a lot of people at work knew I was drinking, but they didn't. I didn't do anything wrong enough
Right.
for them to do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back, I'm glad I got my rock bottom, because these last 5 years have been absolutely spectacular. And drinking non-alcoholic beer, I never really drank beer when I was drinking. So
Like
yeah,
you.
yeah. When we did some like DIY projects or big things in the garden, you know, they would nip across to Bernie's and get, you know, a 6-pack of beer, and just getting a 6-pack of like Caliber or Heineken Zero, just to drink one after you've done something. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it really is nice, and it's been nice. My wife's not a big drinker. She's like, I guess I would say below average drinker. She's above average for everything else, but she's a below average drinker. One of those people that drinks on vacation and you know, a few times in the summer or whatever. And so when we go out, it's been interesting for a long, you know, for probably the first, I don't know, 6-8 months, I would tell friends, like, it's okay if you want to have a drink, because I know we're not here and we're not going to close the place down. Like, we're here for dinner. I know that that's not where we're going with this. And she was skittish about that, obviously, at first, but it's been really nice to go, and now she's like a crusader for this. Like, when we go places and I'll ask, or I'll see the menu or whatever, and like we live not far from Frank's, and so we were at Frank's one day, and they didn't have the craft NA that they had there the time before, and she's like, we need to talk to the server. Like, somebody needs to talk to the bar manager about this, because if they're just going to have one NA beer, that's just, they need to have the good one back.
Yep.
And like, I was like, it's okay. But it's absolutely, you know, and if you're that person that your stumbling block was that you drank a case of beer every day, then this probably isn't for you.
It's probably
yeah. I was a, you know, for beer for me was mowing the lawn or doing projects outside, or I like to fish, so fishing with friends or whatever, but it was never like, that was never my go-to. I've told people this before, if they never would have made Bacardi Coke, I probably wouldn't have ever been an alcoholic, but just in jest. But it's kind of a niche thing, the NA deal, because obviously it's a stumbling block for a lot of people. So that's something that I'm always careful about when I talk to people, but
yeah,
definitely all about it for me.
It's interesting. I feel like I might like your wife, because I find myself too sort of being like hey, you need to be thinking about this.
We were, I think it was Chicago Airport, and we had a delay, and I said, let's go and have a drink. So we went into the United Bar Lounge. We just happened to have a couple of passes. So we went up to the bar, and Dana asked, he said, oh, what kind of wine have you got? She said, do you have non-alcoholic beer? And he went, no. And she went, and I said, I'll have a Diet Coke. And Dana said, no, you're not having a Coke. We just walked off.
I just think everybody can keep a 6-pack, a 12-pack around for the few times that somebody asks. That is no inconvenience to anybody. And you might literally be the difference between saving somebody's life and ruining somebody's life, simply because you say, yep, we do. It's just, it's that simple. Yeah.
Absolutely.
There were some meals I used to drink a beer with, like fish and chips. But beer and fish in Fargo do have Bud Zero. And it's fantastic to have a Bud Zero with your fish and chips.
Yeah, for me, like a cheeseburger and beer, or pizza and beer, like I feel like that's a Friday night tradition for millions of families around the country, is, you know, the Friday night pizza and a 6-pack. And so, yeah, I'm all about it, and I really think the timing wise has been great for me, because I feel like the NA thing really hit about the time that I sobered up.
I think so too.
I remember driving probably just a few months after, when Bud Zero came out, and they had, I'm not a basketball fan, but which basketball. It's one of the huge NBA players is on billboards for Budweiser, and the fact that Budweiser actually has taken out billboards. There's one on 32nd Avenue South in Fargo, just west of University, a Bud Zero billboard, and the fact that they're willing to pay for a billboard. And Bud Zero had a Super Bowl commercial this year for what, $5 million for 30 seconds or whatever it was. That should be a sign to our local breweries, which are great places for people to socialize and hang out, and they make amazing products. Is if Budweiser is willing to do it, if Coors is willing to do it, if Heineken is willing to do it, the biggest beer company in the world, Stella, I was surprised the heck out of me when I was at a bar in Florida a couple months ago, and my wife had beat me there, and she had ordered me a Stella NA, and I was thinking of I used to fly through Dubai Airport 4 or 5 times a year, and I would always order a Stella because they always told us that if you're anywhere in the world and you don't want people to think you're an American, or you have to conceal the fact that you're an American, order a Stella.
Yeah.
Because it's universal everywhere on the planet, Stella or Heineken. And so to be able to, I mean, if the biggest beer companies in the world are doing it, they're not only doing it, but they're putting money into it.
Yeah.
Then it's time for some of the local breweries to be able to do that. And I'm not a brewer. I don't know how beer is made that much. I know I like it. But I think they can do it. And I think they can do it well, because I know a lot of guys in my profession that aren't alcoholics. They can drink normally, but because of our job, if we have a critical incident, like especially a shooting, we get blood tested afterwards. And so that's part of our process. If there's an officer involved shooting and you're one of the officers that's involved in that, you have to go. The department compels you through some Supreme Court rulings and stuff at threat of your employment that you have to take a blood test. And I believe they do hair and urine as well. But they check you for all the illegal drugs, even like prescribed painkillers and anything that can affect you, from the neck up. And so a lot of guys a lot of people in my profession have a hard and fast rule that they don't drink during the work. So when they come home, they don't have a beer unless it's their Friday. And so a lot of guys that I know now, because there's a few of us who don't drink, and have kind of championed the NA. There's guys that keep a 12-pack of Bud Zero or Heineken Zero in their house so they can have a beer after work without it being alcohol, even though if they're just going to have one, fast forward 12, 14 hours, if they're involved in a critical incident, that's not going to show up on their blood panel, but they just want to be able to say, I haven't had a drink in 3 days, whatever, when they get asked. So there's a lot of all that to say, there's a lot of people who I think would get behind the NA movement here in Fargo-Moorhead that aren't alcoholics, that don't have a substance abuse.
I think that's a great point. I mean, we hear all the time that Gen Zers and millennials are just choosing not to start drinking. They've grown up around it. They know the damaging effects of it. And so they're just making the choice not to even introduce it into their lives, but they are highly social. They want to gather. They want to be supporting local breweries, local restaurants, that kind of thing. So I think your point is right. This is not the kind of thing that is only for people who can't drink or shouldn't drink. This is for people, period.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really interesting to watch it evolve too, because your point, of course, is absolutely accurate. Heineken doesn't need the money that they're making off of NA beer unless there's real money to be made.
I mean, Alex, you brought up a good point about billboards and advertising. So 2 of the main sports I watch on TV are the English Premiership Soccer League and the Grand Prix.
Metric football.
Yes.
So even though these sporting, the electronic billboards at all these big stadiums, you see Heineken 0-0 flash up on them all the time. Last Sunday was the Australian Grand Prix, and the main sponsor was Heineken Zero. They actually changed the spelling of Melbourne to have 0+00 in the middle of it.
Wow.
Yeah. And that couldn't have been cheap.
No.
I think so.
Oh.
Yeah.
No,
it's a really interesting time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of it too is just conversations like this, people being willing to say,
Mm-hmm.
I don't drink. So for you to stand up and have won those massive cases of beer and say,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, I don't drink, as opposed to just, well, I'll just take it and figure out what to do with it. Because you need to be ashamed of it. You just owned it. Well, that's how change happens, is when people stop hiding it and they just own who and what they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Incredible.
And like you were saying, Baz, it can't, the Australian Grand Prix doesn't just give away the naming rights for the race.
Yeah, because it's the right thing to do. Yeah, no.
They're not doing it morally, and that's not a knock on corporations.
No.
They have to make money. And so if it's big enough for Heineken, it's big enough for Stella, it's big enough for Budweiser to put real actual money into a product and product development, that it's not just some gross, like, syrupy, weird NA thing that they make because there's a tax write-off or something, I don't know. But they actually, like, Bud Zero tastes like beer. You wouldn't know it. Heineken Zero tastes like Heineken. Like, they replicate that uniquely Heineken taste in their non-alcoholic beer, which is awesome. And I actually, when I was up in Grand Forks for one of my son's hockey tournaments, and we went to the brewery there, Half Brothers.
Yeah, you wrote to us to tell us this.
Yeah, I said Step Brothers Brewing, and that wasn't right. It was Half Brothers Brewing. They have 2 NA beers on tap in their brewery, which was awesome. We were there with a bunch of hockey parents, and I was able to try both of them. And I talked to the server, and she explained kind of the why or the how it works for them. So what they do is they make their regular lager, and then they make a beer that has guava in it. That wasn't my speed, but I'm sure a lot of people would like it. They make those 2 beers as an alcohol variety. Then some of that gets diverted to a plant in Minnesota where they remove the alcohol and use that to make the seltzer that this brewery also sells. So it was fun for us because the alcohol that came out of my beer that I was drinking was in my wife's strawberry rhubarb seltzer or whatever.
That's really interesting.
That's really interesting.
So, like, there's a business sense to it. You're not wasting anything,
right?
And so I thought that was neat. So like I said, I think I don't know how to make it a thing, but I feel like there should be some kind of incentive, especially here in the Upper Midwest, where we have absolutely no doubt we have an issue with binge drinking and alcoholism. I see it daily in my work.
Yeah.
Almost everything I'm involved in has something to do with either alcohol or drugs. And you look at, downtown Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo on a Friday and Saturday night, everyone is there, everyone is drinking heavily.
Yeah.
And these businesses make a ton of money off of it, and that's great. But there should be some incentive to keep some sort of NA menu or taps or whatever rotating, some sort of incentive on their liquor license or something like that, where even though I've worked for the government my whole life, I'm not a huge fan of the government jumping into private business and telling them what to do, but I feel like there's something there. I just looked at, a friend actually just sent me a menu for a brand new steakhouse called Harry's in Grand Forks, ironically owned by the family who owns Happy Harry's. And they have an entire NA cocktail menu built into their menu. This is a very nice restaurant. Built into their menu is a whole page of NA cocktails.
Yeah.
So even more, it's there. Everybody's doing it. Let's not be behind the curve on this.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let me put up. Yes, Guinness. Your Guinness.
Yep.
So we went to Ireland in 2018. It was the first time I actually managed to get Dana to Ireland since we've been together, and I was worried because I thought, Irish culture was all about the bars and the taverns, and I thought, what are we going to do? I mean, I can drink Diet Coke and go in there, but Ireland have embraced non-alcoholic beer to the point it's one of the best sellers. Mm-hmm. Guinness have got a non-alcoholic beer. It came out the week we were there. So Dana had her first real Guinness.
Yeah, I don't need to do that again.
And I tried the non-alcoholic. I had a half pint or a glass, as they call it, of non-alcoholic Guinness. And it's actually quite nice.
Yeah, but I agree. I don't like to chew beer, but it is good. I mean, I don't like beer full stop, but the chewing is particularly challenging. But it was shocking to see even Guinness, like the monolith of beer, saying that not everybody can or should drink. Mm-hmm. Justin has something to say. Even in small town Ellendale, I've convinced the bars to provide me with IPNAs, and others are buying it also. There we go. I just love that so much. Let me just put this back up to make sure you see it, Alex, because you may have seen it. I put it up, but we were talking.
I saw that. Thank you very much, Connie.
So I think there's just so many opportunities, again, to normalize it. I don't care what's in your mug. Why do I care what's in your clear glass? Let's just not make it so that people have to feel isolated. I worked at a grocery store when I was in high school, a little grocery store that had a lot of really at-risk people. And this was back when food stamps looked like Monopoly money, so 30 years ago. And it was so clear who was poor and who wasn't by the way that you exchanged money. And now, I don't know if I'm in a grocery store and someone's in front of me, if they're putting in a bank debit card, if they're putting in a SNAP debit card, it doesn't matter. It's none of my business what they're doing to be present in the world. And I feel like it's absolutely the same with drinking. If people aren't ready or comfortable saying they don't drink, then let's just make it easy for them not to.
Yeah. We don't Starbucks doesn't put like a red band around the decaf coffee for the lady with the heart condition who can't have caffeine.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or the skim milk for somebody trying to lose weight.
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah, my wife can't handle dairy. And so Starbucks doesn't like put a big X because she has oat milk on her latte.
Yes. Yeah. So I just think all of these kinds of conversations and people driving it inside where they're going is going to do exactly what you are advocating for. And I think it is amazing to watch it happening in real time. It's moving pretty fast. It's very rare to go somewhere now and see no reference to anything NA.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
So
I mean, like even the Red Hawks. We were at the Red Hawks this summer, and you have to walk all the way down to the Budweiser beer garden in the outfield. It's not at all the places that have NA beer or that have beer. It's not at all the concession stands. But if you go down to the beer garden, they have Bud Zero in the can. I was at the Minnesota Twins last summer. They had Bud Zero at the Twins, and I know that I can't remember where I read it, but I know that's an active priority for the Minnesota Twins to have more NA options because they're huge on everything in the stadium being Minnesota. And so all the breweries and stuff, they try to have tons of Minnesota breweries in there. And obviously that's easy with the big ones like Grain Belt and Shell and all that, but even the smaller ones. And I know they talked about that's a priority for them to get more NA into the Twins.
Yeah, that's
what is the law say about drinking NA beers if you drive? Oh, I would. I'm not an attorney, so I can only give like advice from my perspective. But I can say if I pulled you over and you had a Bud Zero in your cup holder, that wouldn't be considered an open container because, like, you can't sell beer in a grocery store in North Dakota, like with the groceries. It has to be separate. But you can buy Bud Zero at Hornbacher's by the soda. So I would say go for it.
And keep this video at hand in case another police officer says no.
As a cop, like, this is just my opinion. I'm not the state's attorney, and I'm not the legislature, but there's 0.05, I think, is the ABV for Bud Zero, and there's more alcohol in like regular chocolate, I think is what it was.
Yeah.
The fermenting and the sugar in certain foods, there's a higher alcohol content. Because somebody sued Heineken for saying it was 0%, and they had to say, that's why it says 0.0, because it's like 0.05.
Oh.
Because someone sued because it used to be just Heineken Zero. And somebody sued and said it's not 0, it's 0.05 or whatever. But there's actually more ethyl alcohol in foods that we eat every day, just because of the sugars and the way that chemistry and all that. I got a C in that, so I'm not going to go too much farther. But
we'll leave that to the plant cell wall biochemist, Alex.
like somebody with doctor in front of their name.
Chemistry class.
Not the guy who got a C at Oak Grove in high school chemistry.
Yeah.
Dana got a C in chemistry in college, but
oh yeah, barely got a C. Oh, that was a lucky guess.
My lab science in college, I had to take 2 lab sciences, and I went to kind of a unique college, like I said. But so my lab science, my first one was meteorology, because that was the easiest lab science, and then the other one was chemistry of explosives, very niche. But so don't ask me about how plants hold alcohol.
No, none of us needs to know that. Just one guy knows it, and that's all good. Well, Alex, this has been incredibly interesting.
Alex, and thank you for everything you do.
Yeah,
my pleasure.
And congratulations on your sobriety.
Yes,
thank
you. I wish you
extraordinary.
I wish you much luck one day at a time for a very.
You as well, Matt.
Yeah, and to everybody else, thanks for chiming in. This is
thanks for jumping in, everybody.
When people are commenting and asking questions, so keep those coming. Alex, thanks again. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you Tuesday. Take care.
Bye.